a little something different. I have my daughter Vivian with us now, and later in the video, I'll bring in my daughter Charlotte. We're going to be sharing some stories of either embarrassing or disastrous or just silly theater moments.
3 years ago, I was in a production of Annie, in which I played the title role of Annie. It was a very exciting moment for me. It was very big. It was kind of a dream role. I thought I was too old, but I'm really short, so I had to play it. Anyways, there were 9 shows over 3 weekends, and it was this tiny little... It was a church that had been renovated into a theater.
But more like even just a chapel of a church.
Yeah, it was like a couple rooms. Like, not like these nice, like, big churches. It was, like, tiny.
I mean, it was a nice church, but it was small.
So, one day, it rained. First problem with that is we didn't have a backstage crossover space. So, to get from one side of the stage to the other, you would have to go out of the doors to the chapel and around the back of the church and enter in on the other side. So, first problem there, we used a lot of umbrellas and just ran really fast. It was a Sunday matinee, and the rain just kept getting worse and worse. And there, we could hear thunder and lightning, like, outside. Well, it was, like, some ambiance, you know. And then, I'm just gonna come out and say the power went out. Just gonna come out and say it.
Annie in the dark.
So all of the lights were out, and also all of the electric instruments were out. Like, you know, the piano, kind of a key instrument in an orchestra or a pit. There were some instruments that weren't electric that we could still play, but if we don't have light, like, what are we gonna do, you know? We held for a bit to see if it was gonna come back on, and it wasn't coming back on. We waited for a couple minutes. The power went out, like, right at the beginning of Act 2, just sort of standing there in the dark in the radio station, if you've seen Annie. Sunday matinee, low crowd energy. Eventually, people started to take out their phones and use their phone flashlights to light us from the stage, which, you know, kind of a cute, sweet theater moment, but that meant that we could go on with the show for a bit. However, we still have no instruments. We still have no piano. The one instrument that did play melody, the xylophone. Scored by the xylophone. It was something.
Did the power come back on eventually during the show, or did you finish out the entire show without power?
No, it came back on Easy Street Reprise. That's when it came back on. It came back on during Easy Street Reprise, and then we finished the show with the lights back on. After the show, there was a lot of talk. Or it was like, that was pretty crazy. The end.
So at the high school, during a production of The Addams Family, during one of the performances, we had a woman come to the show, I want to say probably 15 minutes late, which in and of itself is kind of an issue. She was having trouble finding where to sit. We have a lot of parts of our auditorium that have bad sight lines, so we wind up roping off a lot of seats for each show. I was using my phone to help get her seated, and she was sort of whispering fairly loudly, and I kind of kept trying to remind her that the show had already started. And I turned around and started to head back towards the back of the auditorium, and I start hearing really loud cellophane, which pretty much at any show that's aggravating, but our auditorium is no eating or drinking in it whatsoever. And pretty much anyone that's ever been to a show there knows that, because the theater teacher slash pretty much owner of the auditorium constantly reminds people with very periodic pointed announcements. If she sees someone starting to eat, she'll come over the loudspeaker and just remind everyone that there's no eating or drinking in the auditorium. Our auditorium is very old. We don't know when they'll ever spend money to upgrade it, so we have to work really hard to keep it nice. So that's why she doesn't allow eating or drinking.
And we have to clean it ourselves. No one cleans the house after a show. The students have to clean it ourselves.
Yeah, so yet another reason to not allow that. Plus, honestly, it's just kind of rude. So I'm thinking she's like opening a piece of candy or something. As I walk over to sort of check, I notice it's a large Chick-fil-A bag. The Chick-fil-A bag that you get when you get a salad at Chick-fil-A. She's attempting to eat a Chick-fil-A salad during a show. I'm like, I as quietly and politely as possible, tried to tell her we don't allow eating or drinking in the auditorium. She continues whispering very loudly, and I finally just very firmly said, you can't eat that in here. You have to go eat that outside. So in a huff, she gets up and storms off and winds up later wanting to know whether I worked for the school. And I was like, no, I'm a volunteer. And she was just very nasty about the whole thing. It's funny now, but it's just, I can't believe that someone would come to a show and try to eat a salad.
Chick-fil-A salad.
They're very delicious.
Did you get a glimpse of which salad it was? Was it the Cobb?
I don't know. Plus, it wasn't closing night. I remember that distinctly. It was not the last possible night for her to see this show. So if you're already running 15 minutes late for a show and you're going to buy the ticket when you get there and you're bringing a salad with you, it might be a good time to reassess. Time. Yeah, like, maybe I'll come a different night. And this is just a point of etiquette since we may as well get something out of this situation. If you're going to a high school show, go ahead and assume that anyone near you is there to watch someone that's part of their family, someone they care about, someone they love. So if you're coming in and ruining that moment, that's really not great. Maybe grandma drove, 2 hours to be there and you're next to her chomping your Chick-fil-A salad. Don't do that. Okay, what's your next one?
Also during Annie, if you've ever seen Annie, not Annie Jr., because Annie Jr. is the one where Sandy is played by an actual human in a dog costume. No one talks about this enough. I need to bring this up. It's written in the script, Sandy is supposed to duet tomorrow with Annie in the Annie Jr. version. It's supposed to be a human child in a dog costume who has lines and a song. And no one talks about this. But anyways, I digress. During the same production of Annie that was the adult version of Annie, I had a real life dog that was my Sandy. It was a very well-trained dog. It was meant to do like commercials and stuff, but that means that it really loved its owner and really disliked me. Did not want to be around me, did not want to cooperate ever. We tried so many things to get this dog named Nanook to like me, such as me feeding it hunks of steak and cheese for every single show from my hand, or keeping Nanook's favorite treat in the pockets of my orphan dress, which were dehydrated sheep's stomach. Didn't smell great. Gonna say that. Kept a lot of hand sanitizer in my dressing room. So yeah, feed the dog a lot of treats and hunks of steak and cheese. And yet, didn't always work out anyways. An example would be, picture this, one of the shows, singing the big number, Tomorrow. Everyone knows it, everyone loves it, huge number, very important, singing with Sandy on stage. So I'm kneeling on the ground, holding Sandy so tight on the leash, because Nanook's trying to get away from me. I'm a tiny little girl. I'm still tiny. I was a little younger than I am right now. I'm still very tiny. Tiny little girl, very big, very strong dog. Holding with all of my might and belting my heart out when I feel a little tug. And then a stronger tug. And then, believe it or not, Nanook bolts to the back of the auditorium. All the way up the rake, all the way up the steps to the back of the seats. I'm still singing. I have to scramble my way up there. Grab Nanook. Grab back. I wasn't like abusive to this animal. The animal was more abusive to me. I'm still like singing my heart out, belting those notes and just trying to coax this dog back to the stage with me.
I think eventually he ran backstage. I remember him leaving the stage early at some point.
No, I think what happened was I got Nanook to stay. I was close to the end. We finished the song. And then as soon as I stood up to walk off stage amid the applause, I just get dragged. Nanook runs right to the owner. I'm just along for the ride.
Good time.
It was a good time. Could not control that dog. But,
It's funny now.
It's funny now. It was kind of funny then, too. Like, you know, how sometimes you can, like, see yourself in the third person and you're like, I must look ridiculous right now.
That's one thing with live theater. The audience is generally very forgiving. And then just something to keep in mind as the actor, in the moment, there's things that seem really disastrous and terrifying. Just always keep in mind, eventually it's going to be fun. Mm-hmm. Do you have one more?
I have one more. A couple years ago, I got to play Ariel in The Little Mermaid. I was very excited. It was over the summer. It was a blast. It was a free show in the park of a town, like the town square park kind of area. So it was outdoors. So we had this great set built outdoors. The pit was like on the ground.
It was sort of like the stage encompassed was built up around the pit orchestra.
Yeah, really cool. It was a great experience. It allowed people to see some theater for no money and support the arts.
Was August.
It was August.
And it was outside.
You
see where this is going.
So,
first of all,
generally, every night, very hot, very humid. We'd curl my hair, and by the time we got to Part of Your World, it'd be straight again. Looking at my hair now, you wouldn't think it, but my hair was straighter then. Our first show actually got rained out completely, so we had to delay our opening night and have some rain check dates that were later in the month. But one show, we thought everything was fine. We started the show, and then we got to Daughters of Triton, and we had to stop. So, like, three numbers in, and we feel some drops.
Which isn't great even for the actors, but when you have a pit orchestra with very expensive, nice equipment, it can't get wet.
No.
So
we had to rush, first of all of the actors backstage.
There was a covered area for the actors.
Backstage. But more pressing, we had to get a tarp just over the orchestra. Were they sort of just like holding it with their hands above them?
I have funny pictures. If I can find it, I'll put it in here. But I have pictures basically
they had to lay the tarp.
Of the tarp over the entire pit orchestra, and they all sort of were like holding it up.
And then, we all just sort of had to stand backstage for like a good 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Or was it a little less than that?
I think it was probably 15, 20 minutes.
15, 20 minutes of us just being like...
Yeah. They were able to use... the person, I want to say it was Lynn. The technical director was pretty much a pro at this. They do usually a show in this park every summer, so she's used to rolling with all of that. And so she has good websites, and she was able to see on the radar, it's going to be fine in 15 minutes. So we just held, and sure enough, Lynn was right. And after the 15 minutes, they were able to take the tarp off. They squeegeed the set.
So that we wouldn't slip on the water.
And the show went on.
It's like we were actually underwater.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on and sharing your funny stories.
I feel like we're on the news. Okay.
All right.
Bye.